Welcome, sirs. The audience here needs no further introduction. The first chief from the Corps of Engineers, General Pande, and former Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Bhaduria, has flown 29 different kinds of aircrafts. You know, I struggle with my Maruti Baleno. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Thank you, sir. And let's hit the ground running, because we also have to cut down on time for the other panels. Sir, we are discussing the multi-domain warfare and lessons from the global conflicts going on. Let's begin with the Europe war, the Russia-Ukraine war. Two images that have left an imprint on my mind as an observer of global events. One is this loitering munition. A drone is hovering and then just targets the soldier and boom, it's gone. And then I have seen those chase gangs. Many of our people here in the audience would have seen those chase gangs, both on the Ukrainian and the Russian side, looking for soldiers because the war has gone on for so long that they're running out of manpower and they have to really chase people and get them. If I could begin with you, General Pande, what's your sense? Is this future war already here? The loitering munition war, where drones are doing most of the work that originally an infantryman would do? Let's begin from there.
Thank you, Abhishek, and giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. So, firstly, in fact, the Army Commander Atrak spoke about the changing character of warfare. So, war in the future is not just going to remain contact warfare as we know of it, or for that matter, kinetic warfare. I think it's amply clear, and there are good pointers from the ongoing conflicts that you'll have to look at warfare both as contact, non-contact, kinetic, as well as non-kinetic. So the future wars are going to be a mix of all this. But yet, there seems to be at times a notion that future wars are only going to be with drones. And as if the legacy systems, such as tanks and artillery guns, are not going to be no longer relevant. In my opinion, I think these legacy systems, conventional war fighting systems, will still continue to be relevant, especially in the context or in our context where we have disputed borders on both our sides. So while drones and the other forms of war instruments that have come about will have to be also factored in. So our capability development requirements in the future will have to take account of all this, especially the lessons that you learn out of conflicts which have happened in the recent past, as well as the ongoing conflicts, including what we saw in the form of Sindoor very recently.
Right. Marshal Bhaduria, while we also had Chief General Dwivedi mention that land still remains the currency of victory, increasingly would you say that air power is gaining more salience? I'm shifting from Europe war to the Middle East or West Asia conflict now, and the way we saw Israel really dominate the airspace and so effectively control the trajectory of the war. You think there are lessons for us in India in terms of air dominance becoming more critical than ever?
Yeah, morning everybody. I think air power in its own sense always had a very, very important role, particularly in conventional conflicts in initial outbreak. But what these kind of wars in this context, if we have to put it in our Indian context, very clearly what recent conflicts have shown, it is just, and look at Sindoor after that. So very, very important to understand that air superiority is now turning out to be absolutely existential prerequisite, so to say, for any military victory. So now we have to see it in our context. It doesn't mean that we have to see from ability to win. The starting point, what air power can give you, the kind of flexibility, the kind of reach, and the kind of results, that lays the battlefield, that lays the template for everything else to follow. be it ground forces, be it the freedom for naval forces to operate. So from air power perspective, that is important. Now it has to be seen in its totality. So this was always there in some measure or the other, but increasingly the kind of wars that are being fought, you don't want much attrition on your side. You want very precise targeting. You don't want attrition at the target. Forget Gaza, that's another story. But in all other cases, when we wanted to hit terrorists, we wanted absolute precision. Look at what happened on 8th and 9th, if you see at top Sindoor. That's also, they were nowhere in the scene. They were not allowed to even be in the air. That is again air superiority. And we hit whatever we wanted, the kind of precision. It has its own elements. Now air power is absolutely, you have to talk of air defense, multi-layer, you have to talk of ability to strike, kind of precision. The nature of weapons are changing, the nature of sensors is changing, ISR, your supremacy in EW spectrum and, dominating it, your networking. So everything, when you see in totality, I think that's the case.
Pande sir, you agree with Marshal Bhadoria? He says that air dominance is existential prerequisite now. Chief said that land still remains the currency of victory. And so are we actually looking at...
But don't mix the two. What Army Chief said, if holding land is important. What he said is absolutely true in its own sense. If everything gets defined by the objectives, if your objective is to move, if Russians' objective was to capture more land, the land forces movement and the focus there is the primary force required. But for them to be able to succeed, the control of air and air superiority would be the absolute critical aspect to be tackled before they can succeed.
So I'll split the question. I'll split the question. In the context of Operation Sindoor, we did not have a single soldier from both the sides crossing the borders, and yet still we had 4-day war. And for many, maybe the Gen Z, they would think a war is something which is fought on a laptop or just watched on TV. I mean, because there's no soldier going here and there. But if you look at the Russian-Ukrainian context, it's been 3 years, and such war of attrition that they're running out of soldiers. So how do you see these two contrasts?
I think... In my opinion, I think we'll go wrong to believe that future wars will be like what happened in Sindoor. I don't think that's a correct way of appreciating things, because you have conflicts, the rest of it like you mentioned. So to take up Sindoor as a template, based on which you must now look at your capability development in entirety, you must reorganize your structures, organizations, your doctrine, philosophy may not be the best thing. While it makes all sense that whatever you learnt out of Sindoor, you must incorporate them into your current, modify, factor them in your capability development requirements. But my sense is we should not go entirely as if future wars will only be like Sindoor. It will only be sort of beyond visual range, non-contact. And you must remember, in our context, like I mentioned, we have disputed borders on either side. So to that extent, what the Army Chief said, land will continue to be the decisive domain of warfare. I would tend to endorse it, with a caveat that the air will continue to have an important role, which indeed it has always had in the past. You always planned land operations in terms of achieving first air superiority or air dominance. So air has always been an important part of war fighting.
Right. In fact, Bhadoria sir he spearheaded our counter response to the Galwan clashes and the Galwan move by China. The entire mobilization of our Air Force at that time, and of course Army later, which you also oversaw for a couple of years. So yes, in a way, Galwan clash also, and the kind of mobilization we saw was also a war. I mean, the state of war preparedness, if not exactly war, where you are deterring the enemy with power projection and with your presence there. Marshal Bhadoria, my question to you is, the full-fledged war where Air Force had full play was in 1971. more than 50 years now. Even 1999, when you had a sort of a little restrained play, was 25 years plus more. Operation Balakot is when my generation really saw Air Force in action for the first time, like the boys got the toys. And then, of course, Operation Sindoor, where the Air Force has so much to talk about. You think finally Air Force is really getting the kind of attention it should? I mean, it's a beaten to death question about the squadron, depleting squadron strength, but there is much more to Air Force than just having those planes, fighter planes.
Yeah, we should, Air Force, like you mentioned, air power for a conventional conflict has always been important. It's not that something new has been discovered. But while the boys had the toys got the clearance for Balakot. So after 71, we never, utilized it. And Op Sindoor is absolutely totally. First, so we have to see it in the context of what the nation has decided today, what our leadership has decided. Op Sindoor is important from that. Okay, the readiness to say that it's a new normal that has got defined and we will hit the terrorists, despite we knew everything, how it will escalate, what will happen if we hit them hard inside Murid ke Bahawalpur, those kind of targets you could never imagine. So Op Sindoor is important from there. It's a new normal, it's a total kind of freedom given to the services, and everything was covered earlier. I don't want to go into details, but the objectives is what is important. So, like I said, Op Sindoor was not a conventional war or a full-fledged conflict. It was with the limited objective of hitting the terrorists. When they started to hit our targets, their objective was to calibrate it to the level required and still hit them hard enough. Only that was required. And therefore, only the air elements came in. Yeah. If it had got extended, there would have been further involvement, army, naval forces. So, it is to be seen as an integrated capacity and capability that needs to dominate and needs to act. Yeah. Okay, so we should no longer talk about only the air power, only air force, only navy. It was an integrated effort. It was implemented in that manner. If it had extended, everything would all other elements would have come in a bigger way. Important issue is, as a nation, what are we capable of? Right. What are the kind of weapons we have? Right. Could we hit what we wanted to hit, right, despite China having given them everything?
And would you say it was China's war that Pakistan was picking up? Like Pakistan had all the...
It was China's elements.
But the war machine was Chinese.
War machine in terms of radars, capabilities, latest missiles, aircraft, and some surprises there in terms of the latest that was given to them. In spite of all that, what was achieved is a template that will dictate how we are going to utilize our overall integrated effort in the future, and what kind of weapons and what kind of sensors that we need to develop, what kind of network, and we talked about EW dominance, etc., and cyber and space. So those are the areas that we need to look at carefully. But this is just a template of our capability. It gives you a template of our capability building that's required.
Right. I would say. So since you mentioned IW, I just want to delve a bit on that. Which is that if you look at the Ukraine war experience, for example, if you are consuming it on Twitter, you get a sense that Ukraine is winning. But if you are looking at the Europe war from, if you're getting your information from Telegram, you get a sense that the Russians are winning. So information warfare has come out as a very significant aspect of modern day war. We saw it in Operation Sindoor. I mean, it's a different matter that we sort of showed that we have hit Karachi and, soldiers have gone there, here. But ultimately, there was a lot of gray zone in terms of information war also. Are we fully prepared? Have we taken all the lessons from Operation Sindoor?
So that's right. When you say earlier, we thought information domain was at the fringes, but no longer. It is at the central of your war planning, and it has to be an important factor when you evolve your war plans. Earlier, when you looked at perception, narratives, you only looked at the domestic audience, or domestic constituents, so to speak, but no longer. What we have seen is to look at as to what impact would it have in the international arena. My second point, when you talk of information warfare or information operations, we have a large number of agencies, beside the three services, who are into this domain. So I think we need to have a mechanism, a structure, a more formalized arrangement through which or by which we can have our narrative, information, operations sort of put together. So this I feel is extremely critical. And lastly, I also feel, just like for our war plans, most of you would know that before we get on to battle, we have different contingencies, different plans. So as to if this situation arises, what must my plan be and how do I alter it? In a similar manner, I think we must have contingencies worked out for different scenarios and have our operational plans already ready. Right. So when the situation arises, you are no longer thinking through then or reacting, but you're already put into place your plans which are already thought through in a more proactive manner.
Right. Sir, so before I start tapering off, one very important aspect that came out of Operation Sindoor is our air defense. While we hit our chosen targets with a lot of precision, what was game changer was the fantastic manner in which this multi-layered air defense worked. As General Ghai, who's going to be here, so beautifully put it during one of those press conferences with his cricketing analogy, that if from ashes to ashes and dust to dust, if Thomo don't get ya, Lily must. And if you look at it, this L-60-70 standing outside this very campus, and then the S-400 air missile defense system, I think it was that fantastic air defense which really made a difference. Who owns that air defense? Is it the Air Force or the Army? General Bhadoria, Marshal Bhadoria first and then General Pande.
No, you have to stop asking Air Force, Army, Navy. Okay, now you should start thinking in integrated manner. What is our air defense today is important to understand. Okay, the core of our ability in network is integrated air command and control system, which belongs to the Air Force, is developed indigenous. Okay, which all the weapons are integrated from S-400 down to Akash. Army has integrated all its radar into Akash Tir, which is talking to ISCCS. So we have a completely networked pan-India, complete border, everything information known. And this must be understood. So that is our ability in terms of networking. And in that, all the layered comes from S-400 at the farthest end, and S-400 has 2 layers within itself. A third one is provided by some other missile systems, and all the air defenses of the army, okay, which they are looking after not only their own defenses from AD perspective, they're also meshed into the AD with the Air Force for the overall defense of the area, etc., wherever required. So everything is getting networked. Right. We are not fully into it, but we are large way into it. Okay, and you're right. What our capability from Op Sindoor is not only from ability to do precision strike. Air defense was equally the key. And our ability to deny the airspace to the Pakistani Air Force, where were they on 8th or 9th? None of the aircraft flew. You saw so many PL-15s fired in the first air. What happened on 9th? They were not allowed to be in the air in that zone where they could fire. And we operated at will and struck targets at will after having done the initial suppression along. So that is our capability in terms of layered ability to defend. Also very important to understand, the drones and UAVs and they have got a lot of imagination, caught the imagination across from industry to defense because of very low cost and the kind of damage they can do. You throw in a bit of innovation and some new tech, you see what happened in Russia, what kind of targets they struck. Yeah. Ability to defend. So what Army did on the LOC and what their deployments, in situ deployment, peacetime, still the drones were targeted. The L-70s did a wonderful task. All the other guns, Akash were used for, loitering munition. So overall, I think air defense really worked out extremely well. We have more distance to cover, and we are on track. I think we are on track.
Yeah, Panch, a little provocative question. If you're saying that this was actually India's first integrated multi-domain war, do we really need theaterization then?
Right. Before I come to your question, what Air Chief Marshal Bhadoria mentioned that you need to look at air defense not as Air Force or Army, but in an integrated manner. In the context, I fully endorse that view. Now, in the context of Sindoor, while the air defense, overall air defense gave an excellent account of its capabilities, etc., what we also need to do is look at the areas where there were shortcomings, if any. That is what is more important, right? Be it in terms of the integration between Akash Tir or ICCCS, be it in terms of our stock levels of ammunition, be it in terms of do we need to upgrade our air defense sort of weapon systems, and specifically shoulder fired and other things. So I think this is the time we need to focus on them so that in future our capability development moves along these lines. And I'm sure all this is happening. You asked about theaterization. It has been my view that we have been discussing this for the last, more than 10, 15 years? Specifically for the last 3 to 4 years. There have been large number of discussions, exchange of views, exchange of ideas. So in my view, the necessity of it, for the reasons I don't have to explain here, is well established. Now in what form, what manner is something, there is already a framework. Based on Sindoor lessons, you can probably tweak it, but I don't see that there is a necessity to revisit or question the requirement of theatre command itself based on what happened during Sindoor. Right. So that in a nutshell is what my view on theaterization. I think the sooner we do or get into that route or follow that way, I think the better it is.
Right. Yeah, you would want to answer. I know.
No.
Please.
I want to endorse what on the AD, capability, looking at what needs to be done. It's very important. All our radars now need to be capable of picking up weapons that are launched, not only aircraft, picking up drones, picking up small RCS. Any weapon surface to air which is less than 100 kilometers, that means entire Akash NGs, some other, whichever surface to air, needs to be able to target the weapon that is coming.
Right.
No aircraft is going to come within some 80, 90 kilometers anywhere of the target. So these are the kind of changes that are required. So from industry perspective, this is the direction that needs to move. Apart from networking, etc., which we are well on track. Right. But these are the kind of sensors and weapons capability developing and change in thought process required. On the theaterization, a lot of work is happening, and I think I believe the current leadership is really fully engaged leadership, and I think they are more capable than I am, so I'll leave it to them. So current guys are working, and they are fully into this discussion, and I'm sure they will come out with the solution and implement it.
Right. So that brings me to my last question. I would want both the guests to answer that, which is that Operation Sindoor, post-Operation Sindoor rather, this talk of new normal from the Prime Minister to the chiefs to everyone who takes the stage of India's new offensive defense. Is it really a doctrinal change from the last time we saw this happening, say at the time of General Sundarji with the famous Sundarji doctrine of integrating offense into larger defense posture? This is now more offense, less defense. General Pande first.
Sorry. So indeed, Sindoor, it redefined our strategic outlook in terms of dealing with issues of terror and counterterrorism. It also redefined or defined the new normal in which we would deal with, incidents of terror. So yes, it has been a paradigm shift. What is also significant is the convergence of the political will and the military ability to translate the political will into tangible results. What I also need to highlight is this was a time when defense as an instrument of achieving strategic or national objectives came to the fore, while diplomacy and defense are complementary, operate complementary, but this was one sort of instance where the defense or our defense capability was put to good use to achieve strategic objectives.
Are we going to be more offensive now?
I would say, from Air Force perspective, our policy and our DNA has always been offensive in nature. So our offensive element of air power was always the primary thing, and of course air defense is catered. If you were to compare with Pakistan, for example, their basic build-up and structure is from air defense point of view. Similarly, our army has been offensive in its thought and process, what you mentioned after General Sundarji, some changes, etc. And that's been the case. I think issue at Op Sindoor was that the leadership decided to give a free hand and took those kind of strong decisions to be able to use this capability. For offensive capabilities, particularly air power employment across for hitting terrorist target, never thought of earlier. So I think that is the change. The new normal is that, and the further new normal is now that every act of terrorism will be act of war. That actually opens the field to any kind of decision that we may take. It opens the ability to utilize our combat capability differently. So overall, I think that is the thing. But our approach has always been, offensive element has been, always there in our approach, I think.
But maybe it's more pronounced now. I think that would be a good note to end this conversation, sir. I must add that while we had someone from the Navy missing, I can tell you, friends, that every living soul in Karachi fears one man, which is DGNO Admiral Pramod. He is here. He is going to take the stage in a while from now. You know, that short clip where he said, if next time a situation emerges, Karachi would be taken off. So I think everyone would be looking forward to that conversation also. And with that, I thank both Marshal Bhadoria and General Pande for that very nice, crisp conversation. Thank you so much.